Ladies and gentlemen, it is a particular pleasure for me to introduce our next speaker for today's Green Summit. A speaker who is a personal friend, a speaker who has numerous titles, and you can see them as when you look at the biography, as a National Geographic Fellow, as a Goodwill Ambassador. But I want to say something that I think is perhaps more directly on point about the man you're about to hear from, and that is, I see him and his work as at the essence of what we're trying to get to today in the summit and what we're trying to do as a world, and that is connect with people the imminence of this challenge, and also to provide a sense of hope and optimism that we can produce a better future and preserve for our children and grandchildren what is so valuable and that we, as citizens on this global planet, have been able to enjoy in terms of its gorgeous natural resources. I am so pleased to introduce to you the photographer, the leader, the communicator, Matthias Klum, who I feel has made an art form connecting maybe some of the intricacies, and even we don't even have a full understanding of some of these incredibly intricate, complex contexts in nature with the people who in the end in our global democracy make decisions on this. Ladies and gentlemen, the photographer, Matthias Klum. Matthias.
Thank you ever so much, Ambassador Brzezinski, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here. I want to zoom out, and that's a silly phrase if you're a photographer, but I start there. By looking at, I know there's so many experts, and there's so much, there's like a brain trust in this room of knowledge, and I would just like to be more holistic in my approach. I love this planet. I think we all share that. I've been very privileged because I've worked in some of the greatest and most beautiful places on this planet and for almost 30 years. And what is at stake at this point, and we all know this, and that is that we're putting unprecedented pressure on our ecosystems, on our climate. And we have reached the point where nature is sending invoices back to our economies. This is one of our amazing realms, still thriving. This is Raja Ampat in western Papua, between the Spice Islands and New Guinea. This is a reef, a coral reef, as you can see. And the coral reefs of our planet are not just pretty, or elegant, or mind-bogglingly colorful. They're actually life support systems for the oceans, but also for our planet, the climate, and ourselves. What happens now, increasingly and rapidly, is that we are destabilizing these systems. And when we do so, the first to suffer are the poor people. And secondly, we suffer, all of us, obviously. And this is a very clear scientific fact, but it also needs to connect to our hearts. I want to show you a few sequences. I think we have some sound here, possibly. We'll see if we can get some sound from our wonderful technicians. If not, we'll just enjoy this hawksbill turtle that I follow with a 4K camera when some shining fusiliers come in from the right and just lends beauty and color to this frame. These systems, when intact, or at least resilient, they are so important for the stability of our hydrology, our systems on this planet. So they're not just beautiful, pretty, and worthwhile saving, ethically and morally speaking, but just much more important from other perspectives as well. This is a so-called selfie. It's not really a selfie because it's a fake selfie, because it's it's me in the picture. And to the left, there's a manta ray to the right. And just to be, so you don't think I borrowed a Batman suit. This ray, as I'm sure you know, the largest of all rays. It can grow about 21 feet in wingspan or 7 meters. It's like huge. It's from Renee and Ambassador Brzezinski. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Mark, please stand up. We need to show this. This is bizarre. Do you guys realize it's like a huge Persian rug flying over your head? Thank you so much. I want to show you a sequence when they fly over me. And we should have some sound here as well. I don't know what goes on with this, but we'll see. Doesn't matter. They are, when resilient, when the systems can deliver, when the oceans are clean enough, when we haven't overfished them, when we haven't used cyanide or dynamite, or huge amounts of runoffs or chemicals or plastics, this is what it looks like. So these species, they're not just beautiful, they're also ambassadors for something that functions on our behalf and for our greater good. What happens when we take them away, when we tip these systems through the different quadruple whammies generated by our anthropogenic success? This is what it looks like. Death. Nothing really works here. It delivers nothing to us, to our economy, to our future, to Wall Street, to companies like Unilever. Nothing. So what we don't want is this. This is an undesired state. And the same goes for Svalbard, for example, the Arctic or Antarctica. These big polar regions. This is Aurora Borealis. I can highly recommend sitting there in the pitch black darkness, counting the stars, counting falling stars, and looking at this phenomenal Aurora Borealis painting the sky. So, again, aesthetically incredible. Ethically fantastic. Morally unbelievably powerful. But this is again a life support system. When we tweak the systems or when we destabilize the systems so that we almost happen to come into a situation where these systems self-exhilarate by, for example, melting. You know, when we have a release soot, soot from fires or burning of forest residue or incomplete combustion of diesel vehicles, for example, we have layers of soot all over the Arctic ice sheets. And this self-accelerates the melting. So the wonderful thing is that it's all interconnected. It all fits together so nicely. That's why it really, really matters what we all do. I've spent a lot of time in all these realms, and I cherish every moment. But I also see from time to time how things change, how some things change for the better. Some rivers, some waterways, like here in New York, are much cleaner now than 30, 40 years ago. Same thing in Stockholm. If you come to Stockholm, you can actually fish for salmon smack in the middle of Stockholm. It used to be a ugly, I don't know what, I borrow your phrase or word, cesspool. It was horrible just a few years ago. Now it's incredible compared to what it used to be. So there are good success stories, but we are behind schedule. This is a polar bear mom that really performed very nicely in front of me, falling asleep only a few meters away with her 2 cubs. A dream thing for a photographer used to spending weeks or months in blinds without finding anything. So when you're lucky, you're lucky. So systems that we tip, I mean, we are 7.2 billion people and fairly soon 8, 9, perhaps even 10 billion people. We put this unprecedented pressure on our planet, but now we have new technology, we have enough science, and we're, for the first time, hyper-connected many of us, an increasing number of people, which really is the greatest opportunity to turn the page into a brighter future, because we can actually communicate. We can trigger change right now. This is in Rwanda, and Rwanda is an interesting case. It's the most densely populated country in Africa. And if it weren't for the mountain gorillas up in the Virunga Mountains, this region would be much poorer, a lot of scientists argue, because the fact that you have these creatures there, the mountain gorillas, only about 840 left, they are so precious and so valuable from a tourist perspective, but also for a peacekeeping perspective, because they're an ambassador species. If you keep their realm, you keep pollination, you keep hydrology, you keep stability, you keep future work for thousands and thousands or even millions of people. So this little guy is not just, again, just a wonderful close relative to us. It's actually a peacekeeper and a moneymaker and a stability keeper. So it's very important to understand that keeping mountain gorillas is keeping fresh water. Keeping mountain gorillas is keeping peace. And that's one of the wonderful things about the fact that if we actually manage the remaining beauty on planet Earth, we manage a lot of other things just en passant, which is incredibly important. I came to Borneo, this is Borneo, when I was 20 years old in 1988. I had read up on this place, but I missed one fact, and that the trees were huge, 200 feet tall, and I didn't really understand that I needed to climb up to get the right picture. So I used the lianas. I'd done my research in Tarzan and other great cultural magazines. And I understood that I needed to get up there to get pictures. And that is really to get orangutans, rhinoceros, hornbills, and the wealth of species in this primordial soup, 100 millions of years old. And orangutans now have 10 to 15 years in the wild, then they're gone. And it's exactly the same thing as polar bears and mountain gorillas, is that they are important in their ecosystem. You could argue if they are or if they're not, but the system as a whole is a regulator. It's like going into, you ask your doctor, is my liver really important? He or she will say, yeah, I know, pretty much so, yeah. What about lungs? Can I get rid of my lungs? It's not ideal. My brain, you might need it, We can't destabilize our systems, period. We can't afford to stabilize them further because they start sending invoices with funky weather patterns, drought, floods, extreme weather events, and it's costly. So we really need resilient, big enough chunks of remaining systems, like here in Borneo. Oh, this is another selfie. This is actually me and my wife. This is my wife, Monica. Can you see her? Yes. This is one day at work. And this is me. Yeah, so this is when I'm not hanging with you guys. I'm hanging in the forest with my wife. Yeah. I started, as I said, in the 80s in Borneo. Now, during the 80s and 90s, more hardwood was exported from Borneo alone. Listen to these facts. From Borneo alone than from South Central America and Africa combined. So it's one of the greatest anthropogenic tragedies ever, because now it looks like this. 75% of the lowland forest in Borneo looks like this, the third largest island on our planet. This has changed so much because it changes water current, it changes all sorts of that we used to say were stable systems that are, and slow movers, now are fast movers, and we are feeling the dire consequences as we speak. The fires are completely all over, as I'm sure over the news, and this is a tragedy not just for the ecosystems, And not just for ethnic minorities. Is this worthwhile mentioning? Yes. But also for the economy, the whole Asian economy. That is the world economy. Because the Asian brown cloud can change crop yields drastically and has in the past, which has cost humanity millions or actually billions of dollars. In fact, we're losing about 55 million acres of native forests per year. 55 million acres. And I would say, I have to show you this. This is from a film that I did called The Testament of Tibetan. This is a good friend of mine. He's a blowpipe hunter headman. He has lost everything. This is where he learned how to walk, and he met his wife, he had his children. This is where they fished. They would use nature sustainably. Well, you could argue things are changing. We can't live like this forever. But this is not sustainable. One species, one crop, one monocrop has changed everything into this, palm oil. And this has, we have come to the hangover phase for humanity, if you ask me, which is quite fascinating. And the sacrifices are many. These are orangutans tortured, burned, and killed in the wake of this incredible human enterprise. So this is, I won't show many of these slides, but I think this is wonderful because as we have seen, we have the destruction of watersheds and ground level depletion or degradation, and you have CO2, you have phosphorus, nitrogen, you have overfishing, land degradation, loss of biodiversity, and you could argue that when the Club of Rome report and Rachel Carson's Silent Spring got published, not much had happened. It's like a cheese doodle here. It's not much to say, right? But now, ladies and gentlemen, we're up here, which is much more serious. So we need to bend those curves, and that's, I guess, why we're here together. Is really to do that, and everything here correlates with, of course, fresh water, because these systems is what actually hands us this gift of fresh water on a planet where we have 71% water, out of which only 2.5% is fresh. So agriculture, we cannot, according to new scientific reports in Nature and Science, we really can't afford to make more agricultural land available. We have to use what we have, but the good news is that we actually have enough space. We just have to have better techniques, and those are actually, to some extent, already available. Because with the water, 2.5% that I mentioned out of 71% water in total on planet Earth, we use 70% to produce food. 70%, and we throw away about 30% of that food produced. So we need to be much smarter. We have low-hanging fruits there. So we need to find much better ways of using water, using our resources, and using land to get this paradigm shift going in a positive direction. This is the fact that we actually throw away, this went berserk. I'm sorry. So we throw away tons of food, as you know. And the eutrophication problem is a massive problem, and as well as all the pesticides, and we all know that, and we had experts on, and the panel just talking about that. So regardless of where I am in the world, I meet wonderful people. I meet people that I eventually, if I'm lucky, I gain their trust, and I get to spend time with their children, their families, and I'm invited to share their lives, and I get to photograph them, I get to film them, I get to live with them and laugh with them. And I share their sorrows, and I share their happiness, and that's the greatest gift as a photographer. But I don't know what goes on with this thing. But there's also a huge responsibility to navigate very quickly into a safer realm for humanity. And by doing that in the way I just described, by cherishing the remaining beauty, there is no contradiction. There's really not that we have to choose humanitarian issues or wait, climate. No. What about nature? We have to understand. That's why I also like the new Sustainable Development Goals, because they really take from that perspective, a more realistic grip on the issues. We used to talk about growth without limits. That's what we have built. That's the planet. That's humanity. That's our journey. Then we talked about limits to growth that upset a lot of people. Geez, I don't want any limits. I want my oil, my guns, my cars. I want all of it, right? Burgers, my Volvo. I want it. You know, you can recognize this, yes. Now we have come to growth within limits. How smart is that? Doesn't mean it's the Tesla future. It's the Tesla future. We can do things in a smarter way without sacrificing all the good stuff. And there we go, abundance within planetary boundaries. We are smart. We are connected. We do know what this is all about. We just need to do it. And that's again why I'm really humbled to be here. So by preserving these realms, this is Iguazu in South America, or the big boreal forests. By preserving enough of these realms and keeping them relatively stable, we actually secure a better future, or actually a future at all, which is quite important to mention. So some Galapagos sea lions, when they thrive, when they live, when they are healthy, that is a sign. The sign is that we will be okay too, if we're smart. When things start dying around us, when tigers are gone, hydrology is altered. The systems are altered. How can India now, in 10 years, will surpass, demographically speaking, China with 1.4 billion people? They will not be able to afford not having enough of stable realms to secure groundwater levels, etc., etc. So this is a juggling act that's incredibly difficult, but totally, totally super important for our future. So we can do this together, and I, for one, I'm just a photographer, I'm just a filmmaker, but I'm a little tool in your toolbox, and we all are in each other's toolboxes. So let's get to work, and thank you so much for listening.
Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much, Matthias, for bearing witness. I think that if we're going to actually solve these problems, it's going to be through the power of people understanding the challenge, and you will be an important vehicle on that. I think that Matthias Klum is a national asset of Sweden, and thank you for bearing witness for us and for the benefit of our children and grandchildren. Thank you for being here today. I want to now pivot to, and in certain ways it pertains to even who hosts us today. I'm so glad that Citigroup is hosting us today, because it really will be a combination of the different stakeholders that allow us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the combinations of the different interests that are in play. And we are so lucky to have Carina Albers here, who is the co-founder of Whole World Water, which unites an important stakeholder with an important cause. She co-founded this group, which unites the hospitality and tourism industries to raise money for the 1 billion people who do not have access to safe drinking water. I think it's really important for us to remember that, as we sit in these fine quarters at Citigroup, 2/3 of humanity, 2/3 of us, live in poverty around the world, and bridging that gap is an incredibly important challenge. Carina is a communicator. She has produced documentary films that, including The Economies of Being Environmentally Conscious, in which she collaborated with Brad Pitt, another combination of platforms to really extend the message, and she'll be talking about achieving SDG number 6. Carina. Thank you.
First of all, thank you, Renee, for inviting me to come to this wonderful gathering and for the lovely dinner last night. It was very, very, very much appreciated. And thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for the introduction. One of my favorite sayings, and I contributed to the Queen Dowager, although that's doubtful, is "May we always live in interesting times." Hold on. Not sure if this is working.
This might be it, actually.
Oh, thank you.
That might be mine.
I think it is.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Sorry.
No worries. So 2015 was an extremely exciting and very interesting year. In January, it started out with the scientific journal confirming that we have indeed crossed planetary boundaries, and Johan Rockström and his colleagues at the Stockholm Resilience Center published a revised report that now indicated that we had passed 4, some people say 5, of the planetary boundaries. The second, in my mind, most interesting thing that happened was when Pope Francis released his encyclical called Laudato Si, where he said that, yes, indeed, that humans were causing climate change and that it was our moral obligation to take responsibility for it. The next thing, of course, what everyone has been talking about is the adoption in September by 193 member states, adopting the Sustainable Development Goals. So what does this all mean? First of all, we have crossed 5 boundaries. They are climate change, loss of biodiversity, nitrogen and phosphorus releases, and land use degradation. We've entered a new epoch called the Anthropocene, which means basically that we are living in a human-created world. We are now responsible for the world that we have created, and we need to learn how to adapt and figure out how we're going to live in that world. The second thing, or third, I should say, is which came out in the encyclical and from Pope Francis and among many others, is that we are all interconnected, that everything we do affects everything else. So every move we make basically has a ripple effect. And then lastly, on this slide anyhow, we have 15 years to transform the world into a world that we can all live on and in abundance, as Matthias pointed out. Another thing that came up, and this came up in Addis Ababa, about how are we going to finance the SDGs. Other points of discussion during that event, as well as many sessions at the United Nations, were that we need sector-wide collaboration. There are 17 goals, and within those goals there are a plethora of NGOs and private interests that are playing in that space. And one thing that became abundantly clear is that we need solid sector-wide collaboration. The other thing that came out that was very poignant is that we need to move from project thinking into program thinking or systems thinking, that everything that we do has to be thought of as a system. We need to Whole World Water, which I'm the co-founder of, is an NGO, but we don't behave like an NGO. We behave more like a social enterprise. And this also was something, and a great subject of discussion, is that NGOs have to start moving from this donor model to an investment model. And that we must have global measurement mechanisms in place, especially if we're able to find the funding to finance these goals, because we have to have results-based finance in order to meet these goals within the next 15 years. The other thing that came up is that we needed blended financing models, so public, private, development funds, pulling from many, many different areas to get multiple stakeholders all driving towards the same goal. So this kind of now leads me into sort of what was the thought behind the founding of Whole World Water, and as we've discussed before the SDGs, there were the MDGs, and I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of work with Jeffrey Sachs, so very aware of the thought behind the MDGs, and we had discussions about what we want to focus on are the solutions, like how do we reach these goals? And one of the things that we kind of brainstormed and came up with among other people was, what if we got single industries to adopt one goal, and then that they would promise to achieve that goal. So for example, what if, now moving on to the Sustainable Development Goals, what if the hospitality and tourism industry adopted SDG number 6 and said that they would guarantee that the over 1 billion people that currently don't have access to clean and safe drinking water would achieve it within 15 years. That sounds like kind of an audacious goal, but it's not. And then why would the hospitality and tourism industry be even interested in taking this challenge on? And the reason is because tourists often use and moreover deplete the natural resources in the locations where they are visiting. So in many ways, the hospitality and tourism industry has a responsibility to make sure that those resources are restored if they've been depleted, or at least protected if they still exist. So the hospitality and tourism industry is an interesting industry because it's a huge industry. It's a $7.6 trillion industry. It's expected to grow 5.2 annually, and that growth has been steady. That's not a new number. It's been steady over the past decade. The greatest area of growth for this industry is in the developing world, which just also happens to be the greatest area of need for clean and safe drinking water. So what we decided to do with Whole World Water is we created a campaign. And it was based on a very, very simple premise. What if we got hotels, restaurants, and spas globally to filter their water at source, bottle it in reusable glass bottles, sell it to their guests, and donate 10% of the proceeds to the Whole World Water Fund. And then with the monies that we raise, we invest 100% of those proceeds into clean and safe drinking water projects worldwide. So we did that. We launched in 2013, and we've been growing. But we found that travel and tourism, and especially the hotel industry, is a very complicated industry because there are so many owners. You have the investor, you have the operator, you have the brand, and it's very, very difficult to get decisions. So our sales cycle was much longer than we had anticipated. Then we had what would you call that when you have a good idea? We had, what is it? Not a brainstorm, but it also became aware that we were kind of going after, there's hundreds of thousands of hotels all over the world. But then we discovered that there were 32 groups that actually owned all of the hotels in the world. So instead of going hotel by hotel, we went to the largest group owner and presented our idea to them. And so that gives us what we call scale. So we will never be successful unless we get to scale, and we get to scale quickly. So if you do the math, there's 17.5 million hotel rooms worldwide. The average cost of what we're finding our members are selling their water for is $3. In New York on the Upper East Side, it's being sold for $12. but in places in Australia, it's being sold for $1. So we kind of took the average, and we came up with a number of $3 per bottle. There's 365 days in the year. If just one guest were to drink one bottle of water per day, we would raise nearly $2 billion annually. So that's a very big number, and we really feel that we won't reach that, but we feel that we will reach 50% of that, and that is still $1 billion for the 1 billion that don't have access to clean and safe drinking water. So that's really only a start, right? Because we know we need, now it's no longer millions, it's not even billions anymore, we need trillions to fund these goals. So we looked a little bit further than just this, simple contribution mechanism, if you will. And we put into place this idea where we knew we had to measure the results, but also we're talking about the developing world and the fact that the major investors were investing in the developing world, and this is where they were building their new hotels. So we decided that it was a very good idea if we would encourage our hotel members to identify projects in the area where they were doing business. More importantly than that, we said, if you're developing in Kenya, while you're building your hotel, why don't you set aside development funds for what is called the Beyond the Fence community, and put aside those development funds. We'll enhance those funds. We'll get the government to agree to give you a return on your investment if we can show that you're able to impact that community. And so many people talk about, when we're investing in water projects, the conversation has always been around how many people are served. The conversation needs to be expanded dramatically to more than how many people have been served, but how did that improve their education? How did it improve the economy? How did it improve the environment? How did it improve the health? These are all measurable results which have a real value, and not just a moral value, but also a very tangible value. So this is sort of the direction we're moving in now, and it's kind of gets into this idea of blended finance. So one of our pilot projects that we're working on is in Madagascar, where we're working with the government, we're working with an implementer on the ground. We've got the government to guarantee the return on investment beyond the development funds we're getting from the developing hotel owner. We're also bringing in private equity because for a patient investor, we're able to show that we can actually offer a return on that investment, while of course improving the economy. The other reason this is very interesting is because more than just the monetary and the implications that I've just laid out, it's also the fact that in the surrounding community, this is where most of the employees are, of course, living that are working in the hotel. So we're also able to create this enthusiasm, which then goes to employee retention, employees that are happy, employees that are very pleased with the work that they're doing, and the pride that they have in the fact that they are not only making a livelihood, but they're also improving their surrounding community. So it's win-win-win. It's, again, what I've just laid out. And beyond that, we're also, because we have a measurement mechanism in place, we're also able to, just through the whole world water, that they sell, we've done the life cycle analysis on plastic bottled water. We're able to show how much plastic waste has been eliminated by the adoption of the campaign, and how much CO2 has been reduced. And I think even equally as important, when we present the idea to start with, we present it as a business proposition because it's better for the bottom line. Instead of buying branded bottled water in plastic, you're just filtering your own water source, selling in reusable glass, and we're able to show that you can increase your bottom line by up to 20%. So this is it's an idea, and then as we're talking about this idea, it's working. We kind of have some proof of concept. And I thought, there's so much work to be done that maybe this is an idea that could be implemented against another industry and another SDG as we go forth, and in these next 15 years really achieve all of these goals. So I'm just going to leave you with another favorite quote from Joseph Campbell. It's a hero's journey. And these are polymorphous challenges that we're facing, but the other side of that is just sheer delight if we're to reach these goals. Thank you.